I'm out east again, and this time I'm at Wanstead. Wanstead is a station on the Central Line of the London Underground. It's the first station on the Hainault Loop, or the last, depending on which direction you're going. It's in London, or Essex, or both, or neither. I don't really care. The station was planned as part of the New Works programme. I've covered this in other videos, but to recap briefly. In 1933, the Underground fell under the control of the London Passenger Transport Board, who announced a scheme in 1935 to upgrade the network. On the Central Line, this consisted of taking over suburban lines in East and West London, as well as upgrading everything. The Central Line was originally the Central London Railway and had been built to its own independent standards. The tunnels were often narrower than usual, and it used a different system of electrification. The Hainault Loop was originally rather different. It wasn't a full loop, but rather more of an arc, with the eastern end attached to the line to Seven Kings, just north of Ilford. The lines were all owned by the London and North Eastern Railway at this point and had never been particularly successful, so London Underground felt that a rebuild was in order. Therefore, a new set of tunnels was dug to connect the line back to the line it had just come from between Leytonstone and Snaresbrook, although the old connection would remain in place until 1956. 3 new stations were to be added: Gants Hill, Redbridge and Wanstead. Hey, it's the station from the start of the video. Before any of this, there were legal formalities. One that had to be overcome was the fact that in 1909 an Act had been passed forbidding the Central London Railway from extending east of Liverpool Street, which is where the Hainault Loop is. 2 new acts were passed in 1936 to hand the relevant lines over to the Underground and to permit the necessary extensions. To cover this, and other tunnelling works needed along the Central Line, 40 tunnelling shields were brought into service, all working at the same time. Work began in 1936, with an estimated completion for the whole project in early 1941. The progress they made was impressive, especially considering the marshy terrain they had to dig through east of Stratford. It's a rare transport project that gets completed on time, however, and the Central Line was no exception. In fairness to the Underground and its contractors, though, there wasn't really much they could do to avoid, the outbreak of the Second World War. By June 1940, all non-essential work had been brought to a halt. The extension was halted, but the tunnels were still there. Therefore, during the war, the Plessy Company borrowed them for use as a military components factory. The unfinished stations at Gants Hill, Wanstead and Redbridge were used to access it. I have read that the reason Wanstead is such a boxy-looking station is because it's a direct adaptation of the original factory entrance, but I don't know that that's true. The final station looks very much like the original design by Charles Holden from the 1930s. His architecture of that era tends to be pretty boxy anyway. Work on completing the Central Line continued after the war, despite a shortage of steel for rails. Wanstead was opened on the 14th of December 1947. The Central Line promoted the grand opening as 7 new stations, although the station wouldn't actually be completed until a second escalator was installed in 1948. However, after all that, the escalator wouldn't be replaced until 2003, by which point it was one of the last wooden escalators on the network. The rest of the station was refurbished in 2006. As stations go, Wanstead is not the most remarkable. It recorded 2,771,619 passengers in 2019, which puts it at the lower end of the scale for the London Underground, but quite away from the bottom. Personally, I think it has a certain boxy charm about it. Hello all, I hope you enjoyed this cuboid tale from the tube. If you did, a click on the like button would be lovely, and you may wish to subscribe for more, including a fuller account of the wartime factory. Thanks as always to my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. You are the Plessy factory to my unfinished tunnels. And I'll see you all again very soon for another tale from the tube.